Mark Rogers TV talking college football and national recruiting, and we look at Oklahoma State, a class that came in for 2016 in the mid-40s, depending on your service, but right in that range. Maybe a little disappointing for some Cowboys fans, considering a 10-win football team and a team that's played in major bowl games over the past several seasons. We bring in Gerald Tracy from Cowboys Ride for Free to give us a little bit more insight into the particulars and the personnel. Gerald, it's always a good discussion, so let's dive into the headliners for this class before we maybe look under the radar.
Yeah, absolutely. Headliners, obviously, if you're Oklahoma State, the guys that really kind of surprised some of the fans really late in the recruiting process. Calvin Bundage from Edmond Santa Fe, he chose on that day. He had a list of hats. Arizona, Oregon, I think was up there. OU and OSU ends up choosing Oklahoma State. I think he's a pretty good hit. And he really brings that what Oklahoma State fans have become accustomed to the past few years in that safety/linebacker type mix. He's not afraid to hit those guys. He doesn't really care who it is. He's gonna hit someone. His tape that I saw on Huddle, fast guy, swarms to the ball, and like I said, really not afraid to hit people. I read an article on him that receivers that are in his area, in his eyesight, are scared to get the ball thrown to them because they don't know if that's going to be the last catch of their career. Obviously, injury is nothing to joke about, but when you got a guy that puts that kind of fear in opposing receivers, I think that's a good pickup, and he's a pretty decent sized guy, and he's only going to get bigger with Rob Glass coaching him. And then also Keondre Wudtee, the only quarterback in this class that's going to be on scholarship right away. Really good pocket awareness. He stands straight in the pocket, moves around really well. Obviously, you don't want to go comparisons nowadays. Everybody wants to compare him to the RG3s or the Boykins. Those are a little hard to do considering those guys. They were a little bit under the radar. I think RG3 was a 3-star coming into college. So you want to kind of stay away from those, but at the same time, you kind of do see those similarities in him. He's able to move the ball. He doesn't have a pure throwing motion right now, at least. In his Huddle film, it kind of looked like he's throwing a baseball from third to first. It's almost in that sidearm action. So it's not the preferred throwing motion you want, but at the same time, he's getting it done in high school. And he originally had an offer to Louisiana Tech. I believe that's where he was committed until about a month and a half ago when the whole Nick Starkel business went down. OSU offered him, and then TCU was like, hey, this guy. So they went and offered him. It was between TCU, Oklahoma State, ultimately chose OSU. I think give him a little bit of time. He's not huge right now. Who is at 18 years old? None of these guys are really giant. I want to say he's in that 6'2" to 6'4" range. Could be exciting to see him in a few years. Given we don't know what Mason Rudolph has that position knocked down. It's going to be Mason the next year at least. And unless Mason has just an incredible season in 2016, I don't see a reason for him not to be here in his senior year. So those really knocked down those two. Tramonda Moore was another one. Really interested in him. Big guy. He automatically bring him on the roster, and he's automatically a top 3 offensive lineman on the roster, size-wise. 330 plus, I believe is what it is. Tall guy. Cousin of Tracy Moore, receiver that used to play at OSU a few years back, in case some of those fans don't remember that. Really, like I said, I'm interested in his story because the night before signing day, I believe it was the Tulsa World or maybe the Oklahoman came out and said, hey, sources are saying he's not going to a D1 school because his grades aren't allowing him. But my sources said otherwise, said that OSU and Bob Clements and Gundy are working with him. They're going to get him graduated and get him into school. He may not be there by June 1st like most of the other recruits, but he will be there this fall.
So those are the headliners, and I know it's a class that doesn't really have headliners, but for this class, they're headliners. And Gerald, we've talked about that in the past, and you broke down your thoughts on the 2016 yield. Let's look at some other guys in regards to some guys that are flying under the radar, some guys that I know before we hit the record button that you had some thoughts on that they could make an impact, might be in the development stages. So some walk-ons that might make an impact. Just kind of give us the overview.
Yeah, I'm really kind of looking forward and seeing what Gundy wants to do with Dylan Stoner. It seems like 10, 15 years, it seems like OSU has always had that shifty receiver at the inside slot. He's not tall, but he knows how to move, and he can catch passes up the middle really well. In past years, it's been David Glidden. Without him, they're going to look for that guy. Now, the receiver, you're not losing a lot of receivers if you're Oklahoma State, but you are going to still be looking for that guy, I think. And Dylan Stoner might be the one that fits into it. Watching his film, he's a 6-foot receiver out of Jinx. Obviously, so he knows how to run an offense. He knows what it's like in a winning atmosphere. And from what I've seen, Jinx is one of the better facilities and some of the better coaching staff. So he's not going to come in, and I don't expect him to come in thinking that it's going to be handed to him, because from what I know, I don't know that Jinx is that kind of atmosphere. So I like it. When I was watching his film, his strides when he runs is almost like an outside receiver, longer strides. But a lot of the routes that Jinx had him doing are the inside receiver routes. He was playing that A guy. And he catches the ball well. He's not afraid to take the contact. Don't have his stats pulled up right now. I would love to do that, but I think he could be that sleeper guy. I mean, he was a 3-star guy. He had a few offers to other schools. But he could be that sleeper that he makes an impact right away. Of course, you'd want one of the 7 offensive linemen to be that if you're Oklahoma State, especially after last year. But what I think this offensive line group is going to do is you might have a guy come in and play every once in a while. Heck, you might have a guy that surprisingly starts. But what this offensive line group is really going to do, in my eyes, is push the ones that have the experience to be better. Because those guys, I mean, they do have the experience. And what you really want as a team who's trying to get to that Big 12 championship is you want to have guys who have been there before. And right now, I mean, the OSU was only a game away. If they had somehow been able to beat OU last year, they're the Big 12 champs. So you kind of want those guys that have the experience. And now what you're going to have is that kind of that, hopefully get that work ethic pumped up, that, hey, just because you're seniors, it's not going to be handed to you. You got these freshmen back here that are twice your size. So I think that if you're looking at anybody on the offensive side, it might be Stoner that kind of jumps up. Some other guys, those preferred walk-on, the Smith brothers, they had preferred walk-on offers from Michigan. You were able to get them down to Oklahoma State. Those might be big. They're both linebackers and safeties, I believe is what they are. They could be one of those, Alex Elkins type guys in a few years. So looking at those kind of guys to surprise.
Hey, Gerald, considering the Cowboys do vie for championships in the Big 12, this was a conference that from its inception, especially after Nebraska left, that was only a few years ago, but even before that, Texas, Oklahoma dominated. Now TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State's jumped up in the last 5-6 years. It's up for grabs. And with the resources and the facilities that you have there at Oklahoma State, is there disappointment that while Baylor's recruiting a top 15 fringe class, TCU is just a step behind them, that Oklahoma State's not quite getting what appears to be the talent as some of the competition?
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely, especially if you survey the fan base. There's very clear opposition to what the coaching staff is doing. It seems as if they're really oh, well, 3 stars, that's fine. That's all we're going to want for the rest of forever, and the occasional 4-star. And to an extent, it's working. I mean, you're watching Oklahoma State, and a lot of these guys are 2-3 stars. I mean, Ogba was a 3-star coming in, I believe, and now he's a first-round pick more than likely if things fall his way. I mean, you look at him and you're like, this should be stuff that's in the team. I mean, especially after seasons like 2011 when OSU was border fringe national championship berth, you would think that they'd be getting those 4 or 5 stars, but I just don't know what's going on, because it's not like Oklahoma State did anything any different than what Baylor or TCU are doing. I mean, both of those two teams, nothing against what they've done, they're doing great. But, I mean, they haven't won the national title. They haven't played in the playoff. They haven't been to one of those. Both of them have that huge 2 years ago where, 61-58, that huge thing. They go into their bowl game, and, I mean, TCU goes into their bowl game, just dismantles Ole Miss, and then Baylor goes and loses Michigan State. And you can say that, I mean, OSU, whenever they should have, quote-unquote, been in the national title, they beat Stanford, who was a great team at that point. They had Andrew Luck. I mean, that guy's a great quarterback. So you look at it and you say, like, these are almost the same situations, not traditional schools. Why is OSU the one that's falling behind? And I don't know. I mean, you'll notice early in the recruiting system, in the recruiting time, OSU will go after those 4 or 5-star guys. And then once those guys take them off their list, it's kind of like, okay, well, let's go back to what we're good at. And they do that. They bring these guys in and they churn out 10-win seasons. It's just, when is Oklahoma State going to get those guys? Because, I mean, I think you can agree here, stars aren't everything, but at the same time, teams that aren't getting the big 4 or 5 stars, the teams that aren't getting the top 20 ranks, are the teams that aren't in the national title, if that makes sense. I mean, Clemson and Alabama, they can just plug and play all those guys all day. Oklahoma State isn't doing that.
Yeah, the stars aren't everything when you're looking at individuals, but when you look at a group of 20, 22 players for a given year, or 100, 120 players over a 5-year span, all you have to do is look at the recruiting rankings and you see the teams that are contending for national championships every year. So they mean something when it's Alabama, Florida State, Ohio State, et cetera, that are recruiting in the top 5, and they're playing and barely losing a game each season. So they mean something over time, but there are plenty of examples like what you said with Agba, of 2- and 3-star recruits that turn out to be superstars. There's no doubt about that. You still have to coach them up. There's still Wisconsin and Michigan State out there. They coach them up and play extremely well. If you're a Big 12 football fan, go to Cowboys Ride for free. Check out Gerald's work there. They do a great job, and always appreciate you coming on here, Gerald.
No problem. Thanks for having me.